It is 5:30, and so we are going to get, since everyone's here that's supposed to be here, we are going to get started on time tonight. So the Community Preservation Committee will call to come to order. Let's do roll call. Barry?
Yeah, present.
Diane?
Diane Long.
Yep. I thought you were going to introduce yourself. That's okay. Works. It works, Barry. Frank?
Did I hit the right button?
I think they're on, Frank.
Am I on?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Frank Callahan, at-large member.
Lindsay?
Lindsay Nystrom, Conservation Commission.
And Eric.
Eric Stratton, Parks and Recreation.
Thank you. My name is William Eddy. I'm chair of the committee from the Housing Gang at the Worcester Housing Authority. So tonight we, and let's introduce our great city gang. Jacqueline?
I'm Jacqueline Burmeister, Community Preservation Manager.
Paul Morano, Assistant Chief Development Officer.
So tonight we come back. Welcome back, everyone. It's been a little bit. And so we enter a new phase of the committee. We're kind of in that in-between moment here. We're getting ready to embark on round two, but we're still in the, and Jacqueline's going to give us all the details of, we're still in the implementation stage of a pilot round. I think we've had some interesting speed bumps a little bit since we last left, and Jacqueline will go through each and every one of them. That run ranges from combating, city bureaucracy to unexpected consequences, as we've moved forward. And later today, in today's meeting, we have our guest. Jeanette is joining us from the Housing Trust Fund. We're always happy to have you back. And we're also going to talk a little bit about, some of what's occurred. I mean, there have been some learning moments. I mean, we'll talk much more about this topic, but, I know several of us have spoken about, the learning that, how the money is actually put out. A lot of us who are unfamiliar with grant process, didn't know it was all cost reimbursement. And it's been a learning experience as we've all gone along, and some of our recipients it's been a learning experience for them as they've gone along. And so, but again, we'll talk about that as we get updates from Jacqueline in number 4, and on the 6th part, we'll also have a discussion about the application and timelines. So we have a lot on our plate tonight. So unless anybody has any opening thoughts, I'm going to move to go through the minutes. So we have 3 sets of minutes with us tonight. We have the June 10th public hearing minutes, the June 12th public hearing minutes, and the June 17th award meeting minutes. I don't know, Jacqueline, do we have to take one at a time, or can we vote them all collectively?
Through the chair, I believe that if you want to take them all at once, you can, and if someone wants to take them out of order or go through them in order,
Perfect.
You may as well.
So any comments, thoughts, edits on the minutes? Seeing none. On Barry Frickin's motion to accept the minutes, all 3?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Eric Stratton. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Next up is a review of the FY25 administrative expenditures. That is in your packet. It starts with a email from Chase Mack. Wait, hold on. That is not. I drove right by it. Sorry about that. It is a chart that looks something like this, for those of you who have it in your packets. So, Jacqueline, would you like to go through the CPA expenditures?
Absolutely, through the chair. Fiscal year 25 ran from July 1, 2024 through June 30th. It had several administrative expenses. In addition to staff salaries, there were coalition membership dues, as well as food and supplies associated with the public forums that were held in December as part of the community preservation planning process. So in total, throughout that fiscal year, $113,873.11 was spent on administrative items out of a budget that was approved by the committee of $237,948. So as required by state law, the balance of this fund of about $124,073.98 will roll back into the CPA budgeted reserve for use in the next fiscal year. So for fiscal year '26, we have received a dues request again from the Community Preservation Coalition. You could find the email and the invoice in your packet. The dues stayed the same this year at $7,900. This is an administrative item over $1,000, so this payment must be approved by the CPC. I will add that the coalition has provided invaluable support throughout the first round of applications as well as the planning process, and even went so far as to review the first round of applications with the city staff to help determine eligible expenses. So that was a lot of help. So that is what I have for you on administrative expenditures, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So, any questions before we'll go to motions? Do we have any questions or thoughts on the administrative budget or on the request from the Community Preservation Coalition for renewal? Seeing none, I think the first motion would be to accept the CPA expenditures report.
Motion to accept?
Motion to accept by Eric. Do I have a second?
Second.
Frank. Further discussion, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. On the Community Preservation Coalition dues, I believe the motion, I don't think we really need a long discussion about why this is a valuable group. The motion would be to approve submitting dues for the FY '26 annual.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Eric Stratton, second.
Second.
By Frank. Discussion, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Next up is the update on the Community Preservation Program. I think we have some updates. Lead us off, Jacqueline.
Absolutely, through the chair. So we've had an exciting summer at the Community Preservation Program. Following the recommendations that were made by the CPC on June 17th, I reached out to all of the applicants that were recommended to confirm that they were still interested in moving forward on their projects. Only one project, the Salisbury House Ballroom Restoration by Preservation Worcester, decided not to proceed after the recommendation, but this was only due to internal reasons around leadership transitions that were happening at the time. All other projects were sent to City Council and subsequently approved by City Council on July 15th, 2025. So during this period, we have been in discussion with all of these awardees about the conditions that would be found in the agreement. All applicants have agreed to the signage and reporting requirements as well as the clawback clauses recommended by the CPC. As we awaited the grant agreements to be drafted by our law department, we have recently learned that because these funds are approved by City Council, we are able to set the start date for these grant agreements at the City Council approval date. So this is great news. It essentially allows the organizations to submit eligible reimbursable invoices back to the City Council approval date. So some organizations are taking advantage of this. They're choosing to sign a conditional commitment letter in the meantime while the grant agreement is being drafted still. And of course, this is the first time that we're drafting this grant agreement. We're doing it for a variety of different types of projects, and so it is taking a little time. So they could sign this conditional commitment letter in the meantime, understanding that they will not be reimbursed until the grant agreement is signed. So with that said, we're hoping to get those grant agreements out sooner rather than later. Some other items that we've been working on, we're continuing to do outreach with the CPC, meeting with organizations in the community about projects, and even tabling at events. Last month, I was able to table for the Community Preservation Act at the George Street Challenge, which was fun to talk to folks in the community about CPC, and made some great connections. We gear up for we're also sending out our monthly newsletters, continuing to engage folks that way. As we gear up for the fall application round, we are updating the application and the application guidance form, and I've put copies of those inside of your packets. Based on my conversations with other communities, as well as my own experience with the applicants this first round, the biggest change we're recommending for the fall round is the use of a two-step application process. And then extending an invitation, the first step would be kind of a determination of eligibility that would put the general information about the project on a sheet of paper, well, an electronic paper, and send it to me, allowing me to review the project and work with applicants to make sure the project is eligible before they submit a full application. This allows applicants to not invest too much time into the process and start a conversation with the administration to help iron out questions before those full applications are done. It essentially reduces surprises for everyone at every step. So you can find that fall draft application and the application guidance form in your packets. In addition to that two-step process, the second change that I made to the application guidance packet is to really just spend a little more time explaining expectations around the payout of the grant, that it's reimbursement based, as well as expectations around deed restrictions associated with capital projects, and most specifically for projects related to historic resources. So I'm happy to, there will be an opportunity to discuss this more during item 6, but I am happy to take any questions now.
And let me add a couple things. It's a great report. Thank you, Jacqueline. And let me stress that Jacqueline's done a hell of a job for us. Appreciate it. We all have different roles in this process. I mean, the committee has a huge role in vetting and selecting, recommending projects that go through this. The council clearly has their role to actually fund. And then the administration is left with the unglamorous, but so important role of implementing. And look, it's not lost on any of us that we are on September 16th and we do not have signed grants. And that's frustrating, but it is part of the process. And I have great faith that the law department will get this stuff out and we will move forward. But the problem that's run into, from my perspective, is that the larger agencies, that recipients that have infrastructure, have been able to move forward and have been able to incur cost knowing they're not going to get reimbursed for some time until the city has actual agreements. But what we're running into is that some of our less infrastructure strong recipients who are struggling to get this thing going, who have, cannot incur terrific costs, rolled into a city council meeting a few weeks back when it became clear that some of our, at least one of our recipients, was really struggling to move forward without some sort of bridge loan or something. And the mayor, I know, filed an item looking for the city to create a contingency fund to help those programs that can demonstrate hardship. I'm not sure where that goes with the administration and with the manager and the council, but it's an item that we're going to have follow-up conversations. I know I had a conversation with Peter Dunn about the city's potential options and what are other communities doing. We're not different than other communities. And I think it's a topic that we're going to have as a committee, a topic that the city administration is going to have, and obviously it's already happening at the council, about how do we help programs that do not have the capital themselves to move forward, reliant on CPA funds, and need to figure out how to have funding up front to do the work to get reimbursed. Because this will pass, the whole city administration getting the grants out. But that's going to be a long-term issue for us if we don't resolve, or we're going to end up being a fund that helps those big agencies that have the infrastructure to do this. And we're going to have real difficulty helping small programs that lack said funding infrastructure. Thoughts?
I'd like to make a comment. So I became aware of this situation with the Belmont AME Zion Church, that we had given them or approved a grant for $278,695, and they learned, I think, too late about the reimbursement process. And so when I became aware of it, I'm on a friendly basis with Seth Pitts, the president of the Bay State Savings Bank, and I told him about the situation. He said he'd love to hear more about it. So he set up a Zoom meeting with myself, and then Anthony Pasquale, who's the Chief Commercial Loan Officer at Bay State Savings Bank, and then Sheila King Goodwin, who I believe she's the treasurer of Belmont AME Zion Church. And I think Sheila came to this session when Reverend Talley made the presentation. And I was very impressed with Sheila because of the fact that she's had a 25-year career in banking, but on the individual side. She's now with the DCU Credit Union. And so we went through a lot of the details of the financing of doing a bridge loan for AME Zion Church. And again, Seth Pitts is very enthusiastic about it. And so hopefully it's between Anthony and with Sheila that maybe they can work out all the details in order to get a bridge loan done for AME Zion Church. And again, Seth Pitts is very enthusiastic, and he'd like to do more for the program. So
Sure.
just wanted to.
You know,
pass
whether
that
it
on.
be with our banking industry in Worcester, whether it be with the foundations gang in Worcester, whether it be through the city, this is a topic that we're not going to solve tonight, but it's going to be a topic that's on our plate for a while, I think.
Do we know what other municipalities are doing with the similar situation?
Jacqueline, I know I've had this conversation briefly with Peter, but is there anything you want to add on this topic?
Through the chair, there are some communities that do have a separate fund that can be used to essentially front those costs, part of the costs. But as of right now, there's not a way to use CPA funds to do that.
I mean, one of the first things I asked Diane was, do we have the ability to actually, let's round numbers. If we had $5 million to put out, could we take 300,000 off the top and say, use it as a contingency fund? And the answer was a resounding no. But there are options I think for us to look at down the road here.
Thank you.
Barry, did you say something?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that once we have a few projects that are actually actively underway and they've received the funding and they're making progress, then we might be able to work with some local banks and establish like a list of resources that could be shared with future applicants to help point them and sort of guide them through that process and understand how the spending works and that they need to get reimbursed after the fact.
Because there's also the opposite problem of if we get in the business of putting upfronting money and then all of a sudden the project falls apart. Now you're on the other way. We've gone the other
Right.
direction here. So it's a tricky ground for us.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I think that what Barry said makes a lot of sense to me. I think trying to see if there are any local credit unions that could, help work on this that are, based here in our community, I think would be really helpful resources for this. I do think that we'd probably see more of that for some of these applicants who maybe don't have the capital available. I don't think we necessarily would see the larger ones coming in. But I do think that, I'm thinking of this sort of like how they have the heat loans, when people need to get boilers done, you can get interest-free loans for doing boilers, things like that. So it would be interesting to see if the city could maybe work with or partner with some of these resources in our community to help, organizations or individuals who maybe don't have the capital available so that they could utilize this resource as well. We want to make sure this is accessible by everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd just like to make another comment. I was very pleased that we were able to make that grant to AME Zion Church because a lot of the local foundations in their bylaws do not give grants to churches, and we are able to do that for us. And they are a well-deserving organization because they not only are a historic property, but they also have a food bank and do that on, I think, on a daily basis during the week. So they're fulfilling a need in Maine South.
Terrific. Okay, any further updates, Jacqueline, or anything you want to add before we move along?
Through the chair, I have nothing more on this item.
Terrific, thank you very much. Next up, we have a guest. We're happy to have Jeanette join us. We all know Jeanette, who does a wonderful job as the manager of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and is obviously one of our main recipients of the first batch of money. Sorry, we don't have agreements yet. Do we actually do agreements with the city agency too, or do we?
Through the chair, we will have a grant agreement with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that would be an internal document.
Do
but-
we also do one with the Parks Department, or do we okay, I didn't know how the internal works with the city family here.
Yep, we would do one with them as well. And just a quick update on this item. So we would like to share that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund began to solicit projects to be funded with the CPC award. When we presented the CPC recommendations to the trust fund, we were made aware of some of the challenges that came with applying all of the conditions, including a minimum of 2 units or 15% of the units simultaneously with the affordability and shovel-ready conditions. As such, the scoring rubric to the projects that apply to the trust fund now requires, it requires a minimum of 10% or 1 unit of accessible units, with extra points given to projects that exceed this. I recognize and take full responsibility that this change should have been brought to you a little bit sooner than it has tonight, and we'll make sure that this is better communicated in the future. But with that, I thought it would be helpful to have our Affordable Housing Trust Fund staffer here tonight to talk a little bit about the RFP and the reasoning behind that decision.
Jeanette, hold on one second. Just want to thank you. I thought your September 15 memo was very helpful, very clarifying, and so I want to offer my appreciation for that.
Thank you. Is this on? Yeah, okay. So thanks, Jacqueline. Thank you to the chair and members of the committee. I want to start by saying that I understand and share the desire to create as much accessible housing through the funding of new affordable housing as possible. And the Trust Fund Board recognizes this need as well. It's been central to how we've shaped the Trust's RFPs, or requests for proposals. So from the very first round of funding that the Trust put out, they have required at least 10% of units with a minimum of 1, plus all common areas to be fully accessible. This standard already doubles what the state building code requires, and importantly, it applies to projects of all sizes, not just the larger ones with 20 or more units. So Worcester has really been a leader here, or the Trust Fund has been a leader. Our standard has been highlighted by local advocates as a potential model for replication at the state level. When the Trust set this requirement, the board also recognized the higher costs of delivering fully accessible units. To balance that, we introduced bonus funding and scoring incentives for projects that go beyond that 10%. And this strategy is explained in more detail in the April 2023 memo that I included with the materials, with that memo dated September 15th. And that notes how costs really vary by the project and project type, so rehab versus new construction, number of units, building layout, and so on. So this approach has worked, I think. One of our currently funded projects is delivering 6 out of 9 fully accessible units, and the Trust is supporting 61 accessible units across all of the American Rescue Plan Act funded projects, and that is more than double the 27 that would have been required under the state building code. So the CPC has asked about raising the minimum requirement to 15%, or at least 2 units. And while the goal is absolutely aligned with our shared values, there are risks. So without bonus funding, a higher threshold can make projects financially infeasible for smaller scale and emerging developers, effectively concentrating funding among only the largest, best capitalized firms and projects. And that would really limit the diversity of applicants and the range of projects that we can bring forward. There's also a scale issue. So with American Rescue Plan Act dollars, the Trust had $15 million to support higher standards with bonus funds. CPA funding, as you know, is a little bit smaller. So raising the baseline now without additional resources could unintentionally shrink the pool of viable affordable housing creation proposals. And finally, I'll note that the current RFP round is expected to be oversubscribed with a Tier 1 or shovel-ready deadline of tomorrow, September 17th. Because the CPC has emphasized quicker outcomes with this funding pilot round, the Trust is really prioritizing those shovel-ready projects, and what I mean by that is that they're able to get to a financial closing and start construction within the next 6 months. So striking the balance between strong accessibility standards and financial feasibility is critical to making sure those shovel-ready projects can move forward quickly. So for these reasons, our recommendation is to maintain the minimum of 10% or with a 1-unit floor and continue using scoring preferences to drive higher outcomes. This structure, as I mentioned, is already delivering measurable results, and it'll help ensure that a diverse mix of developers can participate. And I do think in the future, with additional funding, we can definitely revisit raising that baseline. And to enrich this discussion, if we continue it in the future, I'd also be glad to invite Benji Kemper from the Center for Living and Working to a future meeting to share a community perspective on the impact of the trust fund standard and its potential as a statewide model, as is at that 10%. So thank you for discussing this, and thank you for your support for accessible and affordable housing.
Can you state it for questions?
Yep.
Discussion of the members. Eric?
Yeah, so, as was mentioned by our chair, thank you so much for the memos. Those were really helpful for me, especially given the initial motion for 15% or 2 came from me. I certainly appreciate the information that's included in there, and I want to make sure that, we are moving forward with these, and it seems that, we'll probably have to, at least, and this is, I think, a technical question of amending our motion. I am hoping that in the future for projects that we see coming forward, we can try and push the boundaries a little bit with this additional funding. I think the information you provided is great. I would certainly welcome input from other individuals as well. I certainly look forward to hearing from, other community partners who have sort of had say in this. And I think you brought forward some really important perspectives of this as well, so that we aren't keeping people out of the application process by increasing this sort of threshold. But I want to make sure too that with these funds that we are continuing to kind of be a leader in this and trying to ensure additional accessible housing. And that's sort of where my concern came in with this, was primarily around the fact that, I see, we have an aging population, and we know that housing continues to become more unaffordable for many. So I think that this gives us a good opportunity to sort of try and push some of those thresholds. But overall, I think the memos were incredibly helpful. I really appreciate your coming and speaking to us. It's definitely provided some additional clarity for me, so thank you.
Sure. Others, Frank?
I was just wondering if you have the same type of a reimbursement model that the CPA has, where they have to do the work and then you reimburse them after they've already expended money, or do you front the money up to them ahead of time?
So we're supposed to be reimbursement based, and really we are, in the sense that projects have to, they're construction projects. So every month, typically, the contractor submits a requisition, and that requisition is turned around from the developer and submitted as part of a request to the city for partial funding. We never fund like a full requisition. So it's not, we don't need evidence that they have paid the contractor, but we do need evidence that the work has been completed. And we conduct site visits and review like lender advisor reports, everything that goes along with like construction and making sure the work was complete and done to code and whatnot.
In full candor, I have seen you out inspecting the house at the corner of Cedar and West Street.
Oh, I am there often, yes.
So, but that's not part of this. This is an earlier type of project and that type of thing.
But we'll be conducting the same due diligence for all of the requests. Yeah.
All right. And are some of the grantees in the same situation as some of our grantees, where they would struggle to be able to get the funding in order to start the project? And do you have any sense of that, the way that we're finding out about it?
Yeah, so it's similar but different just because of the nature of construction. So part of when we're reviewing applications, we need to see that it's financially feasible and that they have all of the other funding sources lined up, either through commitment letters or actually like they have received the funding. But then, especially for like the smaller developers, can be struggles with cash flow. So do my best to get all of their requests processed as quickly as possible, so that there isn't really lag time between them submitting and needing to pay a contractor back, so.
I think this is completely reasonable. I think it's a very well written and explained. I support keeping it at 10%.
Sure. Barry, you good?
Yeah, I think the fact that we're already sort of ahead of the curve in terms of the 10%, and then that we do sort of give bonus points if they do reach that 15% threshold, I think is meeting the spirit of what we were intending. And then I think maybe in the future we might look towards maybe larger projects. We have a little bit higher threshold, or we see how that would work and if that's feasible.
Yeah. I don't think you really need an amendment. I really don't. I think the spirit of it.
You know, as long as technically we think we're okay, I'm fine with it, and we can always revisit if needed.
Yep.
And I think the last comment I'll have is I did enjoy the write-up about this in the Telegram, just as a note.
Oh.
There's a write-up back in August, I think, about the funding for Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Oh, okay, yes, yeah. Okay.
Sorry,
I
going.
didn't know if there's something new.
No. I enjoyed I think it was some really nice positive attention to the work you all are doing, so.
So while you're here with us, can you kind of maybe walk through a little bit, because I know some of the committee is not all that familiar with the process that you folks use. So right now you are out for procurement. You know, you are going to be oversubscribed, looking for shovel ready. Walk us through the timeline, the next steps for you folks.
Sure. So the timeline that I laid out for the trust fund is a little bit aggressive, so the deadline is tomorrow. So I'm going to take all of those applications and review them internally, along with some other staff, to make sure that they meet the minimum requirements. And then I do have a meeting scheduled for next Thursday, the 25th, for at least some of the applicants that have complete applications in, to come present to the board. We have so that's tier 1 shovel ready. My sense from talking with a lot of people that are interested in applying and what I've received so far, I do think we'll likely end up allocating all of the funding in that first round, tier 1, but we technically have a tier 2 for general applications that don't quite meet that 6-month timeline for getting underway. That is due October 15th. So my timeline right now for tier 1 is to get through the review and scoring process with the board before October 15th. It really depends on how many applications I have by the end of the day tomorrow. So that's what we have right now. I really want to demonstrate to the board, or this committee rather, that the dollars you've allocated are going to projects that you deem worthy of your funding, that you are stewards of. And I know you have another funding round coming up too, so.
We do indeed. So I'm sure we will see you again.
Oh, you will.
Getting the feeling this may not be the last time we see you, Jen.
No, I'll be a familiar face.
We're going to call you frequent flyer here.
Yeah.
There'll be by the way, you will not be alone in that category.
Yeah.
Any further discussion or questions for Jeanette?
The only other question I had is just with regards to the projects that you're looking at for this. How many of those are looking, you know, if you have an idea just in terms of ballpark, you do anticipate a lot of those will be new construction or rehabilitation of existing structures?
It's really a mix.
Okay.
I'm not sure what will end up being submitted, but given like our first round of funding is generally a mix of the two.
Okay. I'm just thinking about this again in terms of overall housing stock. You know, rehabilitation's great because it, you know, helps with this, but it also creates the problem of then, you know, you're not creating additional units. So that's sort of where I was thinking about that.
So by rehab, it's bringing new units. It has to be the creation of new units, I should clarify. So when I say rehab, it's like a structure that's been vacant for a long time. So bringing it up to code, getting those units back online. We're talking years, decades, or conversion. So net new creation. It's not funding just rehab.
Perfect. So this means additional housing stock that's
Yes.
available. Perfect. Thank you.
Well, you're not quite done with you yet, Frank.
So the house at the corner of West Street and Cedar, that was written up in the paper, and they mentioned about the fact that I think there's going to be like 6 units in that house, and that's an existing house that's being rehabilitated, correct?
Yeah, so that was a vacant boarding house. So that's being renovated into 7 units And, yeah, so it sat vacant for a long time.
Yeah.
And was,
And are your applicants, the last time I asked, and some are for-profit and some are nonprofit, what's the mix? Is it mostly nonprofit or is it mostly for-profit companies that are the applicants for the grants?
so in the first funding round, I don't, off the top of my head, so there's really a mix. So like, we have Habitat for Humanity, Worcester Common Ground. There's 2 Worcester Housing Authority projects that are, they're partnered up with for-profit developers, but it is the Housing Authority. And then we have a handful of for-profit, like the West Street project that you're talking about, that is an emerging developer. And then another one is a for-profit developer that they're using the trust fund dollars to create 5 affordable units in an otherwise market rate project that wasn't subject to inclusionary zoning. This was started long before that was adopted. And so this is really them dipping their toes into affordable housing. And the hope is that they'll continue to want to build affordable housing going through this experience.
Thanks.
Jeanette, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you. And so, as I started, when we first started this meeting, I mentioned we were in this kind of in-between phase of looking back and looking forward. And now we turn to look forward. And so, before I turn to Jacqueline to walk through pre-application and the guidance for applicants, I'd urge you to take a look at the calendar. I know it's number 7, but we're going to go out of order for a second. We're in a different kind of calendar this year. We're a little bit earlier in the year. Obviously, and it will feel a little bit familiar in the process as we move forward. But obviously, we are looking to begin this in earnest in the fall and go through the winter months. And you'll see in February is when we get down to the recommendation stage and hope to have it to the council in March. So a little different timeline than we did last year. A little different process that Jacqueline's going to walk through, and but I think it's a very realistic timeline that I have great faith that this committee, and I would imagine we'll have a couple of additions along the way as we move along. How many open seats do we have? 2?
Through the chair, we have 2 open seats. We have been interviewing for positions, these at-large positions. And I believe that there is 1 applicant that will be confirmed at the next city council meeting.
Terrific. So we'll be obviously welcoming at least 1 and probably 2 during the year as we begin this March to March. With that, Jacqueline, why don't you walk us through?
Absolutely, through the chair. So we are looking to, as I had mentioned, we are adopting or hope to adopt this 2-step application process. So this idea of a pre-application in which applicants are able to fill out a few questions about their projects, the budget, what category it fits into, a little about their organization, and submit that in order to start a conversation with CPP staff to determine eligibility. And the idea is that once their pre-application is approved, they will be able to have access to that full application. So it will be kind of a rolling application process in that sense. So we're hoping to open this application online October 21st and have that pre-application window be open for about 6 weeks. During that time, there will be heavy advertising through the city's communication team, and I will also be hosting another technical assistance session to help folks who are interested in applying and want to learn more about what that process looks like. The idea is that while you have a full 6 weeks there are full 6 weeks to fill this out, it really will only take a few minutes to fill it out. December 2nd is when the pre-application closes, so that would be the last day that you could submit that pre-application. And then the full applications will be accepted for 1 month more. So December 16th, we're hoping to have a CPC meeting. This is an approximate date. It's subject to change based on your schedules and your preferences, but this would be when we had the pilot round project updates We are hoping to have the grant agreements all signed by then and perhaps our first round of updates. We'll have an application update for the fall and then perhaps a discussion on the rubric criteria, which we'll talk more about in a moment. January 6th will be when the full applications close. And by the 13th, I'm hoping to have them all to you at the CPC. With the idea being having a January 20th CPC meeting to review applications and determine who we want to invite to the public hearings. Depending on the volume of applications, there might be a pre-selection process that you want to use to determine if all eligible applications will have a public hearing or if you would like to select. Those invited applicants would have the opportunity to share their projects on the week of February 9th. I believe that does not conflict with any school vacations, but that is definitely something to consider. And then on February 24th, have the meeting where recommendations are discussed. Hopefully this time, and then of course in early March, the city council approval. This timeline will hopefully alleviate some of the pressure on the CPC and the CPP staff in reviewing applications and turning them around as quickly. It will also help to, this two-step application process will also help to reduce confusion and questions about logistics on the part of the applicants. Does anyone have any questions on this projected timeline or any thoughts about or suggestions on changing it?
So my only worry when we were doing this is as we get to the end of February 12, 13, 14, and then into the holiday week on the 16th, which I believe is school vacation week, and I'm looking your direction, for members with young children, is that going to cause trouble with getting your scoring in that weekend for those who travel on school vacation week?
For me, you know, having two young children, my goal will be to have it before I were to leave on any kind of vacation. So I think that should work. Looking at it, you know, that we would have that the public hearings the week before, and frankly, you know, once we've had a public hearing on one, we could probably start working through at least scoring that project, you know, as it stands. So I think that as long as I'm working through the week, we're probably in good shape. The timeline overall, I think, sounds good from my perspective. I think I have one question once we have a moment.
Well, it's because
Yep,
of vacation.
so it's on the schedule, anybody? Or otherwise, we're just going to, so then let's go to other questions or thoughts.
So first, you know, you know, I'll say thank you for the consideration regarding the school vacations and the holidays and things like that. So very, very nicely done with sort of threading that needle. The only question I'd have is just looking at the schedule, since we'll start this in the sort of this fall and winter, and then moving into sort of the you know, February and March. Are we intending to still maintain having two funding cycles each year, or are we looking to switch to sort of single funding cycle each year?
Through the chair, I think the intention with this funding cycle was viewing it as just a fall funding cycle every year. However, if that is something that the CPC would like to change, we could consider that as well.
I think let's, yep, go ahead.
One thought I have on that is, say if the amount of money is more than what we're working with right now, say if we go from $4 million up to $6 million in a fiscal year, maybe we would want to split it into two parts. So I think a lot of it is how much money is available
I
to
think,
make that
I
decision.
think something, you know, they say sometimes in business that the market determines that. I think we're going to find out, you know, we've now gone past the pilot. It'll be fascinating to see on the second go-round what, you know, not only how many applicants do we get this cycle, but what do they look like? Is it the big institutional players again? You know, do we start to see smaller entities come in? I think the market, Frank, will answer that question for you. If all of a sudden we find ourselves in Jeanette's shoes, where we have more people asking for so much more money than we have, we're going to know where the market wants us to be. If all of a sudden we, you know, have $6 million and we have about $7 million worth of people looking for money, we're gonna know, we've kind of hit where the market is. So I think it will tell us. Yeah, Barry?
I was just curious, I don't recall if we have this spelled out in our plan or not, but do we retain the opportunity to take a project out of cycle if there is like a time sensitive, like a land purchase for a park or a giant housing project that needs
Absolutely.
funding right away?
It's in, yeah, it's in, right in the application funding that,
Okay.
the different cycles, that, it's on page 3, I think, or 4. It might be like the 1, 2, 3, 4, page 5, there is the application tracks. The standard, the special, and the housing.
Okay,
It-
perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a good question, thank you. Any other? Nope. Great job, Jacqueline. Do you have more? I'm sorry.
Through the chair, I think that is all I have for the timeline, except to say that something to keep in the back of your mind is that in April, I have on here tentatively to have our legislatively required public hearing on our community preservation plan, in which we hear from the public on suggested updates. And there might be more outreach that needs to be done in preparation for that meeting. Just something to consider as we move forward. Thanks.
Terrific. Jacqueline, is it possible in future agendas that we can include an agenda item each meeting on the status of the FY25 each applicant, where they are? Just as a routine, that moving forward in this year and future years, that we each meeting, because a lot of times you and I may talk a lot, but each meeting we don't come together as a committee till once a month, and it'd be good for the members to know exactly where we are with each project. Does that work for folks? And I know we didn't touch on it, even though I see it on there. CPA signage. Has the city actually, where are you on that?
Through the chair. So, as a small update for agenda item 6, there were 2 items that received requests for discussions for this meeting. The first was the scoring rubric, and the second was the CPC signage. So when it comes to the rubric, we received several comments from the feedback survey that was provided to the CPC. 2 things in particular was the weight of each criterion, or the number of points an applicant could receive for each of those 7 criteria. And the second was the definition of each criterion, and this sentiment by some applicants that the meaning of each one was inconsistently applied. So that was evident actually by some projects receiving very different scores in the same category. So the final discussion item has to do with signage for CPC. As of now, all the awardees have agreed to acknowledge the use of CPA funds in their projects, either through temporary signage during construction and then permanent signage in some capacity. I've had individual conversations with each applicant to talk about what's most appropriate for those non-construction projects, right, where it's not as simple as putting up a plaque, and we've come up with some creative solutions. I've had communication with our city communications team. They have unfortunately ruled out the use of a special logo for CPA. We are required to use the city seal. However, if we have a snappy slogan that we want to put underneath it, we are allowed to do that. We are also allowed to create advertising materials such as videos, not advertising projects, but promoting the progress that has been made on each project under CPA. So those are my updates on both of those items as far as discussion items, and if you have any questions, I'll leave this up to you.
So 2 things. One, on the rubric, my suggestion is, before we get to the stage where we're back out and doing actual, meeting with folks and scoring it, either in October or early December, we should put it on the agenda and have a kind of a group discussion about, how we view each scoring rubric, and what is see if we can come to kind of consensus on what constitutes a 1 versus what constitutes a 5. or 3 or whatever we do on the scoring rubric, and see if we can kind of have definitions that we all agree to. And it might help for us. I mean, look, we're a committee, and everyone has different opinions, and, we're all gonna have, our own thoughts about what we want to prioritize, and I get it. Look, I'm as political as anybody else is. So we're all gonna have some thoughts about how do we help ones that we really want to get funded. But let's at least try and get us all in the same kind of, maybe not the same exact spot, but at least in the same kind of ballpark of how we look at the scoring rubric. And I think we can have a good discussion with that. Does that work for folks down the road? The second is, unless we have somebody who wants to volunteer to be the head of the snappy slogan committee, perhaps our city communication department could come up with some really snappy thoughts about, what would look good on a sign. And what would look good other than the seal, and see, maybe we have what other communities do on theirs. I've seen the Boston one, but I've never seen the others.
I was going to say, just as a note on the Community Preservation Coalition website, the communitypreservation.org, they do have a gallery of signs.
Oh, cool.
Which are pretty, it's quite good because they do show some variety there of what these signs look for. For example, one, your Community Preservation Act dollars at work, brought to you by the residents of Somerville through Community Preservation Act. They have a number of other ones. The Community Preservation Act works, and then they have the project that they're funding. So there are a number of different signs there, everything from like the real sort of kind of classic brass plaques to things up on like street poles. So there's a lot of very interesting signage there that may be useful, especially if the communications department wants to take a look and give some ideas. And I think to some degree maybe we want to have some flexibility for this too. There's one here where it's sort of the wood grain looking sign, similar to what you might see at like Cascades Park, something like that. So it may be that we have some flexibility, but perhaps we just determine the signage must say X and have the city seal, and that, perhaps, depending on the city's perspective, maybe we want to have the ability to approve the signage prior to them purchasing and using it, so that we can say, yeah, we're fine with that, or no, we want these changes made.
Jacqueline, maybe could we send that site to the communications folks and see if they come up with maybe a couple, 2 or 3 suggestions that might make everybody happy?
Through the chair, absolutely.
That'd be awesome. Do we have any other? Oh, yeah, Barry.
I was just going to say briefly on the rubric that I did like how the Affordable Housing Trust had theirs set up, where there were a certain number of points to each category, and then you could sort of flex a little bit within those levels, like up to 20 points for highly suitable. And so I think thinking about something like that might be useful as well.
Terrific. Let's plan on somewhere in the fall having a good discussion on that.
Through the chair.
Yeah, of course.
As far as the rubric itself, I would like to include the updated rubric as part of the application guidance to be referenced by the applicants as they are applying for the funds.
So that, we would need that then, we would need to do this in October is what you're telling me.
Correct.
Prior to the 21st.
So, but are you talking about the pre-application or the application? Because if it's the application, could we do this on the 21st and then just post it on the website?
Through the chair, that should work.
So why don't we put that on the agenda for the next meeting in October? And obviously, you'll get the materials beforehand, and let's come ready to have a discussion about it and do a little group think on it. Does that work for everybody? Awesome. Do we have any? Oh, sure.
Through the chair.
Oh, I was just about to ready. I had the words coming.
This timeline does not have a meeting in October.
What's
Would
on the
you like-
21st? Oh, I thought okay, I misread that. I'm sorry. I thought we were meeting on the 21st. We don't. So according to this, the next time we would meet is in December.
Through the chair, we can meet in October if you would like to meet in October.
Are you, I know you have some things planned. Are you good for that?
Yes.
Okay. Don't want to mess you up on that. So, does that work for folks, October 21st?
Sure.
Looks good to me.
No,
No.
I'm away until the 24th.
Why don't folks check their calendars? Again, I want to make sure, if we go back a week, does that cause you trouble?
No.
Okay,
I'm gone from October 7th to the 24th.
folks, how does the 28th look for all of you? I should probably look at my calendar too, that would be smart, wouldn't it? Tuesday, the 28th, folks? Eric?
Yep.
Diane, look good to
Good by
you?
me?
Yep.
Eric? Lizzie? How about we'll meet Tuesday, the October 28th? That work for you, Jacqueline?
Will we be meeting here?
But Jacqueline's gonna have to check, but I would hope, that's our preference is that, to avoid the City Hall parking situation and the City Hall council in general. No. Okay, and with that, looking at Jacqueline to make sure she's not about to say you forgot something else. On Frank Callahan's motion to adjourn. Second
Second.
discussion, hearing none, all those in favor? We are adjourned.
Aye.
Great to see everybody.